It's hard to believe that it's been almost 20 years since Peter Jackson and his team brought Tolkien's fantasy epic to the big screen, a task previously thought of as being unfilmable. We've gone back through the filmmaker and cast commentaries that were first released with the extended DVD version of The Fellowship of the Ring to find the coolest behind-the-scenes facts, references, and Easter eggs. While Jackson had shot the footage in the prologue during principal photography, he had decided to abandon it during editing as it felt redundant and wanted to just start the movie with the scenes in the Shire. However, including the prologue was one of the few mandatory demands from New Line, and it had to be quickly put together while the film was being scored. Both Ian McKellen and Elijah Wood were recorded to narrate the prologue, but in the end, the filmmakers decided on Cate Blanchett because of her strong and powerful voice. The Hobbiton set was constructed near Matamata, a town on New Zealand's North Island. It was more than a mile-and-a-half square and took more than a year to build. The scene in which Gandalf bangs on Bilbo's door was McKellen's very first scene on his first day on set. He had literally just finished shooting the first X-Men movie and flew straight to New Zealand to start shooting Fellowship. The moment when Gandalf bangs his head on Bilbo's ceiling was an accident, but Jackson kept it in. There were two bag-end sets. One set was normal sized for the Hobbit actors, while the other was identical in every way, except it was a third smaller, to give the impression that Gandalf is much bigger than Bilbo and struggled to fit in the house. Billy Boyd was the only Hobbit actor who didn't have to wear a wig. Jackson said he had the perfect Hobbit hair. The scary voice for the Black Rider as he searches for Frodo in the Shire was provided by Gollum actor Andy Serkis. The memorable scene where Sam says that one more step will be the furthest he has ever gone from the Shire was written the night before it was shot and squeezed into the schedule the next day. It might seem odd given he's made some of the greatest fantasy movies of all time, but Jackson doesn't like wizards and magic in movies. Jackson said, "I don't like old guys firing blue lightning out of their fingertips and doing all that unusual wizardy type stuff. This is the reason the fight between Saruman and Gandalf is just two old guys beating the hell out of each other." The scene in which the hobbits tumble down the hill was shot on the very first day of production and resulted in one of the film's biggest injuries. A stuntman dislocated his shoulder and was taken to the hospital. While it looks like the hobbits are in a remote wood, this scene was in fact filmed in a park right in the middle of the city of Wellington, surrounded by skyscrapers. Some of the background extras in the bar were people on stilts to make them appear much taller than the hobbits. This fight scene was on Viggo Mortensen's first day on set. Viggo was cast as Aragorn very late in the process, replacing Stuart Townsend after production had already begun. Mortensen was hesitant to take on the role, but his Tolkien-loving son Henry convinced him to do it. Lurt was not in Tolkien's books and was invented for the film. Jackson stated it was because the villains of the book have limitations. You know, being a giant eye and a wizard who doesn't go anywhere. So he wanted villains that the heroes could have a proper showdown with. Shortly before they shot this scene, McKellen showed Austin the moment in Tolkien's book where Sam holds Frodo's hand while he's recovering in Rivendell, and he suggested that it should also happen in this film. At 6'1", or 186 centimeters tall, John Rhys Davis was the tallest actor in The Fellowship, which makes it funny that he was cast as the little dwarf Gimli. Jackson described the Council of Elrond as an absolute nightmare to shoot in terms of avoiding crossing the line. This is where a character needs to look in a certain direction when talking to each other in a scene, or else it gets very confusing for the viewer. So in a scene where everyone is sitting in a circle, it becomes crazy hard to orchestrate. Bilbo's scary face when he talks about the ring was in fact a rubber puppet that was morphed into Ian Holm's face for a few frames. Sean Bean claims he was already back home in the UK when they shot the scene where the Fellowship leaves Rivendell. The moment Aragorn tells Sam that Bill the Pony will find his way home
Bye-bye, Bill.
was actually the filmmaker's concession to the studio. Screenwriter Fran Walsh called this dialogue lame, and Jackson says he actually wanted the tentacle monster, known as the Watcher, to eat Bill after the Fellowship enters Moria. Mortensen suffered a black eye and a swollen face after a weekend surfing accident. When filming resumed that Monday, Jackson had to shoot the actor from the left to hide his injuries, resulting in what Jackson described as awkward shots. This reaction to Gandalf's death was shot long before the Moria scenes were filmed, and several weeks before McKellen had even arrived on set. The actors had to express their grief for a character they had not yet seen, played by an actor they hadn't met yet. Cate Blanchett wore, quote-unquote, 6-inch disco heels for her scenes as Galadriel, to give her the height and stature of an imposing elf queen.
I would have gone with you to the end. Into the very fires of Mordor.
In the book, Aragorn doesn't say this to Frodo. The screenwriters thought that was a waste and ensured that Aragorn says it directly to the person he is talking about.
The Horn of Gondor.
This moving overhead shot of the Uruk-hai charging down the hill was achieved by mounting a remote control camera on wires between two trees almost half a mile apart, which was then rolled down the wire via pulleys. Lurt's final fight with Aragorn was shot by second unit director Barry Osborne while Jackson was filming Boromir's last stand just meters away. This shot of Lurtz licking the dagger wasn't in the script and was Osborne's idea. Although Lurtz loses his arm, the studio told the filmmakers that no spurting blood is allowed, which must have been tough for Jackson, who really showed a love for gore in his earlier movies. Jackson requested a subtle digital color change of Boromir's face as he dies. You might notice that it goes just slightly paler. Sean Bean had already left the set by the time this funeral scene was shot, so a life-size model of the actor was used for the shots of his corpse in the boat. Do you know any cool behind-the-scenes facts that we missed? Let us know in the comments, and hit that like! And as always, keep it here at GameSpot for more coverage of everything worth watching.